We're officially live on YouTube for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Today, we're talking about supercharging your rental property ROI with the secret tools of money engineers, financial engineers. I read a lot of titles. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, that a man that I like to call GC, because he's got great concepts, because he knows how to generate cash flow, because he's a great co-host, and because his name is Gregg Cohen. Say hello, Gregg.
Hello, everybody.
And with us, as always, we call her MTM because she brings us the moments that matter, and because her name is Madison, the Magnificent, our community manager. Say hello, Madison.
Hey, everybody.
And I want to welcome you all. We've got a little surprise here at the end. We've been doing this 50-50 raffle. I believe that we raised a giant amount of money. Madison, how much did we raise?
A little over $9,000.
$9,000. That means that $4,500 are going to go to a veteran and their dog getting a new home. I like to say this, right? If you don't like veterans or dogs, get the hell out of America. And the other $4,500 are going to go to our lucky raffle winner that we're going to announce at the end of the show today. You excited, JC?
Can't wait, baby. Can't wait.
And beyond that, the other thing I'd like to say is I'd like to welcome the YouTube audience. I'd like to welcome our podcast listeners, but I also want to give a piece of advice, and that's to go to nyais.com. Join us for a Tuesday or a Thursday when we do this thing live. Be part of the community and be part of what else, GC?
The roll call, baby.
The roll call, baby. We got Madison already in the chat welcoming everybody. We got our leadoff hitter.
John Henning
Wishing everybody a good afternoon. We got Walt Hart coming in.
Stepping in.
Second today on the chat. Walt, welcome to the show. We got Bill Shields. You want to read it?
Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros.
Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. We got a Not Your Average Guest. If you're checking in on the text, then you get called Not Your Average Guest unless you change it yourself. So somebody checking in, hey, community. Hello, Not Your Average Guest. Good to have you. We got Nick Brower in the house with a what's Nick has been here before.
All right. Sorry on the new name.
Nick has been here.
False call there. Well, what's that?
Yeah. We got Chris Lee from Fernandina Beach. Welcome back. We got the touchdown maker in the house.
Shannon Baker.
We got our friend from Denver.
It's clearly.
I get a name for Leslie. Did we get a name for Leslie?
I think even last time you called her our dear friend from Denver. She deserves more than just our friend from Denver.
Denver friend. Leslie Wilson in the house.
Great to see you.
We got Big Papa in the house.
Jay Cohen.
The notorious Jay. Jay.
That is so good.
He loves it when you call him Big Papa. He's your dad.
So good.
Jay Cohen in the house. We got the ringmaster.
Drew Barnhill.
Drew Barnhill with a hello, everybody. We got our favorite name to pronounce, Aaron O'Neill.
Into the lights.
Welcome, Aaron. Good to have you. We got the second family of the Not Your Average Investor Show community, all the way from Marietta, California. Gary and Rosalind Riley. Are we saluting?
We don't know what to do.
Curtsy.
We don't know. What should we do for the second family of the Not Your Average Investor?
All right. We got Tony D in the house from Jupiter. And Anthony Dida checking in. We got our boy, Jeff Wonder from New Orleans.
Yeah. Past gas.
Yeah. Holding it down in New Orleans. We got a new name here. Daisy O. Saying hello, everybody.
All right. Daisy. Way to go.
Daisy.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. Let me know who pronounced it correctly. Who wore it better? Me or Gregg?
Nice shirt, by the way. I really like the color.
I really hope Hervé's here so he can make fun of us wearing the same shirt today. We got Danny Davies coming in from Germany with a Guten Tag. We got the karaoke witness, Deborah Schwartz. My favorite. It's officially my favorite nickname.
So good.
Checking in. We got the better Gregg.
This is
Gregg
my favorite nickname.
Gregg number one.
The better Gregg.
Yeah. Greg Stone say, hey, howdy from New Jersey. We got Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida.
No, that's the home of the manatees,
the home
Pablo.
of the manatees. I feel like we haven't talked about the manatees. And Marilyn, is good to have you back. We got Mark Norman joining us again. Hello. Welcome back, Mark, with a hi all. We got the first family of the Not Your Average Investor Show, Ken and Carolyn Meline. We salute you. Another rainy day in Silicon Valley. We got Eileen from NorCal. Eileen, I think you've been here before, right? Eileen Mateos. I think.
Well, I hope
so.
That's
the last name or not.
We love you. Whether it's Eileen Mateos or not, we love you.
I love it. Renee De Hombre with a sup, boys.
All right, Renee.
Sup, Renee. Good to have you. We got Not Your Average Guest. Somebody else checking in from the text with a wet day in the peninsula area.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
I wonder what peninsula. Oh, the peninsula area is that's like San Mateo, Redwood City. It's like that area between San Jose and San Francisco, I believe.
Okay.
Let me know if I'm right. We got Gerald Schwartz in the house. Gerald from Herald.
That's awesome.
We herald you, Gerald. Good to have you. We got Amita Khan saying hello from Los Angeles. That's a new name.
New name?
New name.
All right.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the party.
Good to have you. We got my boy, Bob Wiesner, checking in from Marietta, Georgia. Good to have you back. Leslie said, probably forgot the real estate maven of Denver.
Ooh, I like it. The real estate maven of Denver, Leslie Wilson.
And we got Hervé Francois in the house saying, what up, JWB fam? Hervé, matching shirts for you, bro.
What do you think, man?
What do you think? We know you like matching shirts. Good to have you in. We got Vic from Virginia. I like that, the alliteration. Vic from Virginia. New name.
Make it easy for
Welcome
everybody.
to the show. We got Kranti Atluri is back. Welcome back, Kranti. Good to have you. We got Guy Layton from Utah. Guy, that's a new name.
Oh, new name.
Yeah,
We got a lot of new people. So
it.
glad you guys are here today. This is going to be a great show for you.
Future star of the show, financial advisor extraordinaire, Kelly Barenbaum, welcoming us from Winter Park, Florida. Good to have you.
Love Kelly Barenbaum.
Kelly, good to have you in the house. Yes, it is Eileen Mateos from NorCal. That's right. We got him. Jonathan Lubin, Jacksonville Beach in the house.
All right.
And a bunch of new folks. I wonder, let me know in the chat. We got a Raj Bantu, right along Raj. Right along partner Raj, back in the house. Raj, you hadn't checked in a minute. Good to have you in the house. And we got a bunch of new names. I would love to know what brought you here today. Was it the title? Like, do you want to hear about maximizing ROI and these different concepts? Let us know in the chat what brought you here. Of course, ask your questions in the Q&A. This show is for you. And let's kick it off, man.
Game on.
We've got 3 tools that are made specifically for financial engineers. Plus one. We might get to one at the end.
Yeah, little special sauce at the end.
The first one, GC, is the tool that I think first opened up my eyes when we started doing the properties of the week, right? Mm-hmm. This idea that you can benefit with other people's money and actually get appreciation for money that isn't yours, that goes to your bottom line, and eventually that money becomes yours, the tool of leverage. Mm-hmm. How do you explain that?
Well, I think if you're talking big picture, right, in order to reach your financial goals, you need to become a master of using your investment dollars to earn the best risk-adjusted return for yourself. And that's hard for people to do. But if you can do that, how to use your own investment dollars to do that, that's a very big step. You got to learn how to do that if you're going to accomplish your financial goals. The next step, and really where you get into the mastery component, is how do you use other people's money? How do you use other people's money in a risk mitigated way to deliver the best risk-adjusted return on investment? And in the country we live in, we have an opportunity that most citizens of other countries just simply do not when it comes to the access to smart debt that we have through borrowing on single-family rental properties. You know, it's been around for decades and decades and decades. It's a part of the fabric of our monetary system here in the United States. And it is a huge opportunity for all of you to learn how to use and master smart debt. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is being able to buy a rental property, put a smaller percentage down, and then the balance of the funds needed to purchase that asset and own that asset come from a financial institution. So very simply, you know, you can buy a rental property, put 20% down, 25% down, maybe 30% down, depending on what's right for you in your situation. And the balance of that, whether that's 70% or 80% actually, is other people's money. That's the bank's money. And when you use this tool, what you're able to do is to take an asset and fully maximize all 5 profit centers and still do it in a way to mitigate risk. We're not talking about taking outsized risk, which is a basic tenet of how to use smart debt. And when you do this, you earn a better return on investment. You create more diversification for yourself, and you flat out, you get to your goals quicker.
That was a lot of words.
Okay.
I get it. I want to show it on the sheet of how we get it, right? But the way that I see it is for the lane man, right? I know that when I got into real estate investing, before that, all I had ever invested in was the stock market and in bonds, right? And in bonds, you invest and you get a certain amount of cash flow. In the stock market, I'm buying a stock at a certain price and I'm hoping it reaches another price and I make the difference between that. That's appreciation, right? Similar to when you buy a rental property, you are buying it at a certain price and you expect it to go up in price for a while, right? And you benefit from that appreciation. The big difference is I can't take a loan out to buy stock, right? Because it's too risky, right? But in rental properties, you can, right? I can put down 25% So if I'm going to buy a $200,000 house, I can put down $50,000 and I can get a $200,000 asset, right? And over time through debt pay down and whatever, the rest becomes mine. But immediately that house, those $200,000 worth of value start to appreciate. And as that appreciates, 100% of that appreciation is mine, even though I only put down $50,000 on the 200,000, right? So that leverage piece to me is the thing that really, really attracted me to it. And essentially, if you're putting down 20%, you get 5-to-1 appreciate, like you get basically like 5-to-1 leverage. If you put down 25%, you're getting 4-to-1 leverage. And if you're putting down, I don't know, 30%, you're getting the 33% repeating leverage. Right.
There we go.
So I just think that that's really cool. And
I remember in our conversations at the beginning of our journey, when we were running and we were talking about this asset class, you said, this sounds good, but I just don't really get it. Like, I don't understand why this is so much better than stocks and bonds. And I remember you saying, I talked to my friends who, some of them are really savvy and really smart and all this. And they say, you know what, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would I take on the potential challenges that come along with real estate? I don't get it. But I remember once you finally, fully owned and understood the leverage piece,
correct,
then it was like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I get it. Leverage is the one of the biggest differentiators for this asset class versus another.
Yeah. And I understood the leverage piece once we started fiddling around with the properties of the week. So let's do an example of that right now. Let's go to 5398 right here. This is a sample deal evaluation that Gregg sent to me a little while ago. And normally what we're looking at here is there's this appreciation rate where in Jacksonville, best in class, right? Anything you want to say? I see your lips wanting to move.
No.
Okay, cool. There's this appreciation rate down here, right? And which leads to these things, but we're going to put this appreciation rate at 0 right now.
We got to go to the analysis conventional financing tab and adjust it there. Go to row 16, annual appreciation rate, and you just change that to 0.
Okay, cool.
There we go.
And when we go to the summary, you now see a very different picture here, right? Like you're seeing this like estimated cash purchase at like 10%, and you're seeing this estimated conventionally financed appreciation rate at 1.40%. That's at 0. And when we put it back in, estimated appreciation rate, 4.6%. This thing just went up by more than 10%, went up by 12%, right? So this is what just happened. When you apply the leverage to the appreciation on a cash investment, it goes up by the amount of appreciation. If you put it for a conventionally financed investment, it goes by the multiplication factor of whatever you were putting down. If it's a fourth that you're putting down, it goes up by 4. It goes up by 4x. If it's a fifth you're putting down, it goes up 5x. If it's a third you're putting down, it goes up 3x.
It does. It goes up by those numbers, 3x, 3.33x, or 4 or 5, like you're talking about. But you won't see that actually reflected there because of our commitment to showing an IRR, right? So if you're asking, well, why didn't it exactly go up, 3 or 4x right there? It's because it did, but it took you 10 years in this schedule that we built out. And that's the only reason why. So it's that IRR perspective would be the only reason, but that's beside the point, right?
Yeah.
When you use leverage, like you're talking about, this is that multiplier effect that you're talking about. And you can count on this home price appreciation to happen because if you look at 10 to 20 year segments of time in the history of Jacksonville real estate, and it will be the same way in whatever market you're in, history repeats itself. Real estate cycles happen and home price appreciation rates revert back to the norm.
Right. So I feel like we do have to explain that piece, right? People in the Great Recession got burnt because they thought that appreciation rates, you could count on it in any window of time.
Right.
And in a short window of time, it's kind of risky. It might, like it's gambling, right? Whereas over a full market cycle, over a 10 to 20 year period, that data normalizes. And every metropolitan area has a normalized appreciation rate that if you extend the data long enough, you are going to hit that within, like a very small variance, no matter what. For example, Gregg's properties that he bought in 2006, right before everything dipped for the only time ever, if you normalize it from 2006 till now, he is right on line with this historical appreciation rate
Absolutely.
and making that same leverage.
Absolutely.
Right. So for leverage to take place, and I think it bears to say that for this investment class to be risk mitigated, right, to like perform in a way that you can like know the answers to the test before it happens. If you're in it for a full market cycle, you can count on these numbers, you can count on these different things, and it gets better like a fine wine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just had a thought talking about risk mitigation. You know, you ever thought about why banks lend so freely on single family rental properties, but they don't lend on stock portfolios?
I've never asked myself that question, though.
Why do you think? I mean, banks don't do risky things.
Yeah, correct. Because banks, for one, there's a hard asset behind it.
Sure.
Right. So like their risk is mitigated by there's utilitarianism behind it, right? Like at the end of the day, if worst comes to worst, they get a house that they can do something with. And I would imagine that too is because there is a standard statistically proven number that's gonna like stay consistent in this asset class, which is probably that.
Yeah. You think about the underlying income, like the underlying income that's supporting them making a loan. So like the underlying income that's going to be able to pay off the loan. Compare that in rental properties versus whatever source of income profit you're talking about in the stock market, right? In single family rental properties, rents have never decreased year over year nationally. They have never decreased year over year nationally. And home prices have gone up almost every single year over the last 40 years. They didn't go up during the Great Recession, which this was different than the rest of those years, right? They did go down during that time. I'll certainly give you that. But over 90% of years since 1982, home prices have gone up. So consistency both in rent prices and a pretty good level of consistency when it comes to home prices. And at the core of this consistency, this stability, this, that underscores this investment. And that's why banks love to lend on it.
Yeah.
Compare that to the stock market, right? In 10 out of the last 20 years, and 20 years has been a good run for the stock market, there has been an insane amount of variability. There's been at least a drop of 10% in the S&P 500 in 10 out of the last 20 years. So you're right. There's a hard asset there. There's a utilitarian aspect to it. But at the end of the day, banks want to lend on things that consistently get paid back and keep their value.
Yeah.
And that's why banks lend on these properties. That's also something that drives me and most savvy investors into owning rental properties. If they're looking for consistency, just of course, you don't get that in the stock market.
Yeah, it's what Kelly is saying in the chat, right? They don't control Tyler either, but it's harder to nail down the collateral when payback is dependent on market gains and or dividends. To me, that is illustrative of this idea of in a short window, the price of a stock could be anything.
Right. Yeah.
While in a short window, the price of a house is gonna stay relatively similar to what the price of the house has been. And over a long period, it's going to act predictably, while a stock inside, like in a short window, it could be anything. It's what we've been talking about recently, this idea that, liquidity implies risk.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more risk of large swings to values when you are in a very liquid market. And the illiquidity of real estate is something that has, been something that people have said, well, that's a downside to real estate. But especially at a time like this, that illiquidity helps creates price stability and has a floor component to it. And when you mix emotion with liquidity, which you have a lot in the stock market and other assets, things can go either really in your direction or really in the opposite direction. You just don't have that same thing when it comes to rental properties. Yeah,
agreed. Don't want to get too far down the path. We're talking about tools of financial engineers. First one, leverage. I'm going to try to summarize it, right? Leverage for real estate essentially means that you can bring $25,000 to the table, but play with $1,000 stake.
$25,000 to the table and play with $100,000 stake.
That's what I said. What did I say?
You said you could bring $25,000 and play with $1,000 stake. That's the opposite of what we're talking about.
My bad. Let me say that again, right? So you can bring $25,000 to the poker game, but you're playing with $100,000 worth of chips.
There we go.
And that means that when you are looking at numbers on a deal evaluation and you're seeing like a cash on cash return of XYZ and a monthly cash flow or this and that, what you really want to look at is this idea of how much is your money going to work for you? Because you can bring some money and then have other people put money in the pot and you get to benefit from all of it. Is the beauty of leverage on the way in. Beautiful. So that's leverage. Tool number 2, refinancing. Talk to me, GC.
Yeah. So refinancing is the opportunity for you to take this asset that you may have purchased 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that has been performing for all 5 of those profit centers and has seen a gain in home price appreciation specifically. And you can go back to the bank at some point in the future, call it 5 years after you purchased it, and say, you know what, bank, let me take some of that equity that's just sitting on the sidelines, just sitting in my property, and let me use some of that equity as a tool to help me get to my financial goals. And so you can refinance that property, which means you get a new loan, depending on what the interest rates are, and the terms of that loan will be dependent on what the market is at that point in time. But you're able to get a new loan, and you're able to get more many times than you originally had your loan for. So you're able to pull out equity and be able to use that additional equity to make another investment, maybe add more rental properties, maybe do private lending, maybe do something else. Maybe you're living off of that. There are many folks that just employ this strategy. They're able to pull out money, call it every 5 years or 10 years. And when they pull that money out, they're able to use it however they would like. And the greatest thing is when you refinance a property, you actually don't pay any taxes on that. That's not income that is taxed as well. So refinancing is a strategy that is incredibly important to understand, and it's a great option to have, and is something that is underutilized by most investors out there.
Yeah, we were talking about it today. So just on a basic level, we talk about 5 profit centers, right? You're getting the cash flow from the home, you're getting the appreciation from the home, you're getting your resident paying the loan down for you. That's a debt pay down. You're getting your tax savings, you're getting your inflation hedging. As time goes on, the combination of that debt pay down and the appreciation means that you are building equity inside the home, right? And at a certain point, it makes sense to look at that equity. A bank will look at it and say, you know what? I'm going to lend you some money on the basis of that equity. And you can take that money, and if the interest rate of how that money is lent gets put to work for a higher rate of return than what you are borrowing it at, minus whatever closing transaction costs you have to do, then it just makes sense to take that money and put it to work. Like you said, when you pull it out through a refinance, you're not getting paid taxes. So it's not like you don't have to sell your house to put the money that you're making on your house to work to build wealth for you.
Absolutely.
Which is super, super attractive. That is akin to back, like if we go back to this idea of like, can I get 25,000 grand and buy $100,000 worth of stock? This is akin to if, let's say I have $100,000 worth of stock and it appreciates to $200,000. I would have to sell that stock to go buy something else, pay taxes on that stock, and then go reinvest it in something that would perform. In this scenario, what you would be able to do is be like, hey man, I got a really good idea of buying Tesla 5 years ago. And now I want to take that like $100,000 that I gained, and I want to use that money to go buy some Facebook stock, but I don't want to cash out my Tesla stock. I still want to make money on my Tesla stock. And they're going to say, no, you can't do that, buddy. You're crazy.
You can't do that.
But in homes, you can.
Yes.
In homes, you can, your bank will lend on that equity again, and you can put it right to work, purchasing other properties, doing stuff like that. I think Hervé did this, right? Like Hervé, when Hervé, we brought him on, he bought like 2 or 3 properties, and like 3-4 years later, with that same money that he had in those properties, refinanced and bought 3 more properties and doubled his portfolio without any extra money down. That's really powerful stuff.
Exactly. And it's not, I mean, it is a strategy that many JWB clients have been able to use over the years, especially those that have been owning rental properties for, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because, interest rates, I mean, you're not locked into the interest rate that you have when you purchase the property, right? For the loans that clients get, these are, call them regular vanilla loans. They're in place for 30 years. But if you want to pay that thing off in year 3, there's no prepayment penalty for the loan that you are in for your rental property. So that gives you freedom and flexibility to understand when is the right time for the equity that I have gained in the property, and when's the right time based on mortgage interest rates, and then when's the right time for your life goals for you to tap into that equity and then get your next round of purchases. And it's a great way to get to those financial goals quicker.
Love it, man. when it comes to this, number one, where is that reflected on a deal eval sheet?
Nowhere.
It's nowhere, right? So like that's not there.
Right.
This is one of those things that's like when JWB sells your home, it's your home and they can't tell you what to do with it. So you're not going to say, hey, and then 10 years down the line, you're going to do this, and then it's going to lead to this much returns.
Right.
So that is like one of those places that you under promise, over deliver, right? This idea that, you know, if you want to follow this path, at some point down the line, you're going to be investing with money that essentially means infinite returns because it's money that you're using up, money that you made up, money that somebody lent you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that that's important to highlight. That's not going to be anywhere in a deal eval sheet. Is that one of those things? Does anybody else do that when they sell rental properties? Like, do you know of any kind of like deal eval guys that are out there like, man, this is your returns because you're going to do this? And
oh, you mean like on an initial evaluation, do they assume that you're going to be refinancing at year 3 or year 5? I'm sure they do. You know, it's anything that can make, you know, your return on investment look better. Usually most turnkey property providers sell strictly on getting the highest returns. And so there's certainly an incentive to do that. So it's not normal, I wouldn't say, but I'm sure folks do that.
Yeah, cool. So again, this is when you're looking at an evaluation sheet with JWB, probably with most people, this is just hidden money that's not there, hence tool for financial engineering. The idea that you can get infinite returns later down the line. For me, it represents something else, particularly today, right? We were talking about this. I went on a run with our buddy, Gregg Buckland, the other Gregg.
Yeah, the other Gregg. I feel like that's a nickname in itself right there.
Wait,
no. There's the better Gregg, and then there's the other Gregg. I think he's the other Gregg.
Yeah, correct. We're not going to bring people into this. So I went on a run with our buddy Gregg. And we were just kind of talking about what to do with your money today. And I know that, you know, my outlook right now is the idea that, as you have told us on this show, over the next 1 to 3 years, things are going to get weird, right? Like we're headed into like a weird recession, unlike anything that you and I have like lived through because we weren't alive last time that inflation was a real big problem. You know, combine that with interconnectivity of the world and other countries doing other things and crypto and all these other things that are happening.
Right.
We believe that in the next 1 to 3 years, real estate prices are likely going to stay at least stable or go up, but there is a chance that maybe it dips at some point in the next one or 2 years. That's not beyond the realm of reason, but we are pretty sure that in the next 5 years, real estate values will have gone up.
Yeah, I'd say even in 3 years, I feel very confident real estate values will be higher than they are today.
Cool. We're also pretty confident that over the next 2 years, interest rates are going to do some weird stuff too. They're going to go up and they're going to like oscillate and whatever. And eventually they're going to have to come back down, probably in a reasonable window of those 5 years.
Yeah, it's very reasonable to assume that at some point over the next 2 years, your interest rates are going to be lower than what they are right now. And who knows what happens in between now and then.
Correct. So if we're looking at an environment where prices of homes are going to go up and in the future, interest rates are going to go down, and I'm looking at my money right now, and I can either put it in a stock market that's going to do even weirder things because of all the stuff that's happening, and I have no idea what's going to happen in the next 2 years. In bonds that are not paying me as much as inflation, right? Keeping it in a bank account, which who knows when the next bank run is going to be, right? I literally just bought a little bit of Bitcoin to hedge for that today. We know this.
Yeah.
Right. Or buying gold, which, you know, has very little utilitarian value, but it is a store of value, burying it under my house. I think it's a very attractive proposition to think if I have money that I want to invest, or I have money in the market right now, putting that into rental properties that are cash flowing, that in the short term are not going to pain me, right? In the short term, I'm not going to lose sleep over my cash flowing rental property while the world does weird stuff.
Right.
Knowing that in the next 5 to 10 years, it's very likely that homes will have appreciated, my debt will have been paid down some, and interest rates are going to end up falling. And by the time that the interest rates fall and I'm going to want to get in the game, not only would I have lost out on that appreciation and that debt pay down, but once interest rates falls, prices go up immediately.
That's right.
And everybody's going to be rushing to it. So I want to be sitting tight with this asset that I am, my 3 assets that I've bought that I'm going to then very, very likely be able to refinance in the next 5 to 10 years. And like Hervé did, go get me some more homes for free.
Yeah. Well, I think I love where you're going with that thought path, because it's like, this question that we keep asking on the show, if not rental properties, where are you putting your money that's going to help you sleep well at night right now? And there's just not very many places. But let's separate the 2 opportunities that you have right now. We started talking about leverage at the purchase decision. So when you're talking about where do you think people should put their money, or where would you put your own money at a purchase decision, that's really where that decision comes in, is whether to use leverage or not. Like, for example, let's say that you had $225,000 and you were deciding what to do with it. And you could either purchase one JWB rental property in cash, or you could use financing, right? And you could buy, 3 JWB rental properties, right? And then the other alternative is if you could just buy one finance property and then just keep the rest of it in real cash, like in a bank. So you really have 3 opportunities there.
Got it. So the opportunities is all my cash into one property, use my cash to leverage it and buy 3 properties, or, one property and then save some cash.
Right? Well, the question is, if you made the decision to only put, let's call it $75,000, one down payment to buy with financing in place, what are you doing with the rest of it? Stocks, on average, when eventually, most likely we get to a recession, an average of the last 12 recessions has been a 30% decrease in the S&P 500. So that's not making me feel good about keeping that money in the stock market.
Yeah.
Bonds right now.
That doesn't take the sleep well at night.
Doesn't sleep well at night. Bonds, you might sleep a little bit better at night, but at the end of the day, you're just losing because bonds are not keeping up with inflation. And they certainly don't have any upside. So you might be sleeping a little bit better at night, but you're not advancing towards your financial goals. And then investors used to have just an option of just keeping it on the sidelines, putting it in the bank. Well, that's really bad. If I keep the recent bank challenges out of this, because I don't want to pile onto that too much. I'm not concerned about a bank run. I'm not concerned about, our banks failing in mass. It certainly caused people to think a little bit more about that lately. But investors used to have this option of just sitting on the sidelines and keeping it in cash. But when inflation is still so high like it is right now, that's losing 6% on your money every single year. So that's really you going into an investment decision saying, I'm going to lose 6%. Not many people sleep well at night thinking they're going to lose 6%.
Putting your money in a bank account that returns negative 6%.
Yeah, that's exactly what the decision to sit in cash is. So that's where this idea of leverage and diversification, you can do that by putting that same amount of money out and diversifying that into 3 properties versus 1. This is where you ask yourself, if I'm not putting it into an asset that performs consistently like rental properties, where are you? And I don't have a good answer for that one. Now on the flip side, now let's fast forward. You've owned an asset for 5 years or 10 years, and you may or may not know that you have significant equity built up in your asset, but interest rates right now are really high. That's a different decision, right? And many investors are struggling with this because of recency bias, right? We're all a little bit burned because we saw the opportunity to refinance, a year ago with interest rates being so low. Now interest rates are higher. And I think where a lot of people are struggling is, does it still make sense to refinance? When would it make sense? When would it not make sense to refinance? Yeah. So maybe we should just jump into that a little bit.
Yeah. I'm in, man. Like what I'm hearing you saying is like, man, if I like Hervé did, right? Like if I bought property 6 years ago, and then a year and a half ago was like, I'm going to take this equity and I'm going to refinance it. Well, you're looking at properties that you bought 6 years ago at a higher interest rate that now have equity and now have a lower interest rate. No brainer.
Right.
Pull it out, put that money to work. On the flip side, there could be somebody that bought properties 4 years ago, have not refinanced, have a ton of equity in the property, have some debt pay down, but now they're going to go refinance at a rate that's higher than the original loan that they got. may still make sense. They may be refinancing at 7% right now to get this 14%, but you're saying it's just not going to feel as good, even though the numbers pencil out.
The numbers may pencil out, they may not, but it's definitely not going to feel as good. It
doesn't feel as good.
And I think as investors, we need to get over the emotional component as much as possible. I mean, flat out right now, people are saying interest rates are so high. I mean, the interest rates right now are lower than when I started to invest. When I bought those first 40 rental properties, my interest rates were 7.5% on my loans. And I was excited about building assets that perform for all 5 profit centers. So I think we need to try to get over this emotional reaction we have to interest rates going up so much and just realize that, the debt that we have access to in this country is a huge asset versus other countries. But it may pencil out and may not pencil out. So that's really what I wanted to share with all of you. If you are in that position, when would it make sense still? If you can get over the emotional component, when would it make sense to refinance and pull equity out? And when would it not? Whenever you go and you refinance a property, there's a certain amount of pain that you have to go through to get a loan. So like, to me, if I'm thinking about, is it worth it to refinance? There has to be, a significant return on that investment to do it. That's worth it for me. But I still think that it absolutely could make sense. Here's a couple of examples. Let's say that you have $100,000 of equity in your home. So you bought it whenever. And, call it 5-10 years ago, something like that. And you have $100,000 of equity that you could pull out from a refinance. Well, you're going to have some costs that come along with the refinance. So you might have expenses of maybe $3,000 of just closing costs that come along with it. And so you've got $100,000 of equity you'd pull out. Well, we're assuming if you pull that $100,000 of equity out, you would turn that into another really smart investment. And I'll just keep it simple. Let's assume that you were able to earn 10% of a return.
Private lending style.
Private lending, right? Yeah. You'd earn more than that with a rental property, but we'll just keep it simple. Well, if you want to run the numbers for it, you've got that $100,000 that's coming out, but now you're going to borrow that at, let's call it a 7% interest rate. Okay. I'm just going to be conservative here. You're going to lend it out at 10%. So you're going to make $3,000 on the spread there over a year. And so if you could pull $100,000 out, you'd make 3% on the spread, $3,000 you would make, but your costs going into it were going to be $3,000 to do the loan. So that's kind of like you'd break even in the first year. Now you'd probably keep that loan in place. Let's say that you didn't refinance for 2 years. So now at the end of 2 years, you made $3,000 on that spread. You actually made $6,000, but you had those $3,000 of origination costs. So if you had $100,000, to me, that's kind of like break even. Is it worth my time, your time to make an extra, maybe break even to somewhere around $3,000 before you go and refinance again and get that rate down? Probably not worth it for me, probably not worth it for you.
Because getting loans from a bank is kind of a pain
in the butt, that doesn't really make sense. But if that was $1 million in equity you were sitting on, and I think your point about what happens when interest rates go down again, how home values tend to go up again. If you're sitting on $1 million right now and you have the opportunity to lock in your cost basis, your purchase price at a lower cost today than you probably will in 3 years. Well, I think that value can change. That equation can change.
Yeah.
You start adding some zeros to it. And now instead of you making $3,000, after a 2-year span, we'll go through the numbers again, right? You borrow $1 million, you make 10% on that, and you have, $100,000 that you've earned from your investment. You had $70,000 in costs that you paid on your loan in debt costs. So your 7% turns into $70,000. And now you've got a $30,000 spread that you made year one.
It's different.
And you spent $3,000 to get that loan. So now you made $27,000 in year one. That's probably worth it for me. It's worth my time. It's worth your time, right? And then the second year, you probably make another $30,000 as well. So you might have made $57,000. And that's why it might make sense to do that. It's really dependent on the amount of equity that you have to pull out and how long you think until you probably will refinance later on is when it might make sense to do that.
Got it. So I'm going to try to summarize that as simply as I can using my newfound superpower of summarization.
Sweet.
just letting y'all know. I think I told Greg the other day, I was like, I think I'm getting really good at summarizing stuff. So let me know if that works for you. Let me know in the chat. What you are saying is that in order to decide whether the refinance works for you, the equation becomes cost of refinancing, which is a certain amount of time and hassle, and actual hard dollar cost that it costs to do that, minus the return that you get over the time that you have it out, right? So like it could be 3%, but what you're saying is what's more important is not the actual percentage rate of the return of the spread that you're getting, but the total dollar amount on what you're getting, right? So based on, it's not so much when it comes to refinancing and the time frame that you're looking at, you're not so much thinking about the percentage of how much money you make as much as the total money to be made once you are refinancing.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's when it starts to make sense, right? So like, don't get caught up in like, all right, I'm going to make a 3% spread here. I'm going to make a 3% spread of a what?
Yeah, exactly.
And how long, right? Because then it makes sense, because it may be, depending on where you are at financially, maybe doing that to make an extra 10 grand over 2 years doesn't really move the needle for you, but it might move the needle for you at 25 grand. It might move the needle for you at 50 grand. Definitely moves the needle for you at 100 grand over the next 2 years. And for some people, maybe that's not even that much. For me, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think that's
Right?
a lot of money for anybody.
Cool. All right. So that makes sense. All right. That's refinancing.
All right, there we go.
I like it. I like it. So refinancing essentially means that if you are in the game, you are benefiting from debt pay down and appreciation. And in real estate, you can take those gains from debt pay down and appreciation and put them to work while the original gains are still working for you. You don't have to sell anything. You don't have to get taxed on it. You basically get to double down on your money like a 2-for-1 deal BOGO.
I like it.
All right. I like that. Okay. So let's get into what is one of the, you know what? I think that there's a really good point made by Leslie here. Excess equity in real estate investment is called debt equity because it is not working as hard as it should be. The house will appreciate or depreciate based upon its condition and location and not whether or not it has a big or small loan on it. So essentially, Leslie is saying like, don't get wooed by the number of the loan as much as the money that you can make on the equity of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think she looks at it like it's a tool, right? It is not related to the cost or the appreciation of the asset or the appreciation of the rent. She's just looking at purely the debt and the equity as a tool to help her get to her financial goals.
Yep. And Kelly backs her up, says, good point, Leslie. And with rentals, as the rent increases, the cash flow can better support the debt service. And there may be more potential for using that equity as compared to with a home equity where you may not be able to use it at all because the loan is tied to your personal debt to income ratio, right? So in your own home, since you're not making money on it, it makes a little bit less sense. While in a rental property, taking that debt out, taking that equity out via debt makes more sense because your cash flow is actually increasing over time. Good call, Kelly.
That's great.
No wonder she's a financial advisor. All right. Not that that's financial advice, Kelly. I'm not trying to put you in water. Okay. So now we're moving on to the real, like, if leverage is Calc 1 and refinancing is Calc 2, we're going into differential equations here. We're going straight over Calc 3. We're going into differential equations and talking about the C3X. GC, what is the C3X?
So C3X is a way of compounding your cash flows so that you, in essence, can pay off your mortgages a whole heck of a lot faster. And it's a strategic approach to understanding which debts you should pay down. When I say debts, I mean which mortgages that you have on your real estate portfolio you should pay down. And if you understand the strategy behind this and you start to apply this, you'll notice that your 30-year loans do not stay in place for 30 years. You don't have to make additional principal pay down payments. I mean, you certainly can, but if you just simply take the excess cash flow that you earn from your rental properties that are producing positive cash flow, and you strategically start paying the debt down with those excess cash flows, you're going to see your time to pay off come down significantly, which is amazing because when your debts are paid off, when your real estate mortgages are paid off, that's when the real cash flow starts to roll in.
Got it. So what I'm hearing from my regular brain is this is a way to accelerate the debt pay down, to increase the equity faster, and also mitigate risk, right? Because if you're and increase cash flow.
100%.
Right. So like debt pay down acceleration leads to more cash, leads to more equity, and leads to less risk. Everybody loves all that stuff.
I loved how you focused on the risk perspective, way to mitigate risk, because there's no better way to mitigate risk than to remove, call it $1,000 mortgage payment that you have to make every single month. And that's what you get to do here quicker.
Cool. So let's go through it. GC, talk me this, I'm way less of an expert in this. Not that I was an expert in anything else, but all right. So what are we looking at here, Ryan?
All right. So this is our C3X calculator. And for anybody who wants, especially any current client who wants to take a look at this for yourself, our client service team is happy to review this with you. This is a part of what we normally do during our portfolio reviews. And it's a part of our service. We want you to see not only what it's like and what your plan is when you purchase your homes, but all through this process, how can we help you get to your financial goals quicker? And this calculator helps us do that. But what I've done here is, if we just start at that top section right there, I've taken a portfolio of 2 properties. And this is the one on 1353 Ottawa Avenue. And there's another one at 14067 Halling Street. These are just 2 properties that are currently available for clients. Put the purchase price in there. From those who are familiar with our property evaluations, all this information is straight off the property evaluation. So purchase price, initial investment, mortgage balance, interest rate of 6% is what we have on our evaluations. Mm-hmm. And then it's a standard 30-year mortgage, which is 360 months of payments. Mm-hmm. Next, you'll see the monthly principal and interest payment, which is again right off the evaluation. And then the net cash flow is the net income that comes in at the end of the year. And that's a combination of your net rental income and then any tax savings that you have built into it. And so for these properties, it's somewhere around, call it $125 to $150 a month net for each of these assets here. And so what you do is you take that net cash flow number, and then we come down to the section on the bottom here. And this is where, this amazing tool that we have built here, it autofills, and it basically applies this mentality, the strategy of taking those extra cash flows, that $278, and applying it to the lowest balance first. Strategically, we want to pay off the lowest balance first. Do you know why we want to do that?
To get to owning it outright as quickly as possible?
Yeah, because once you pay off the lowest balance first, then you have the cash flow, the additional cash flow that comes from that loan being paid off, that you then can snowball into paying off the next loan, which is really cool. So what this nifty calculator does is it tells us the months to pay off the mortgage. And so by applying this, so if a client bought these 2 properties, instead of these loans being paid off in 30 years, this house on Ottawa Avenue is paid off in 2041, which it's 2023 right now. So it's paid off in 18 years.
Wow.
Okay. Right. And then what's really cool is, because the cash flows get so much bigger once that first mortgage is paid off, the next property in Halling Street gets paid off just 5 years later.
Oh, wow.
So you have both of these properties paid off by April of 2046. So these may sound like 30-year loans, but by using the C3X strategy and strategically focusing on where your cash flows should pay down your loans, you're able to drop your payoff a significant number of years here.
Got it. So essentially, you are taking a 30-year mortgage and you are knocking 8 years off of it, essentially, on the first one.
Well,
I'm trying to do the math. 2041,
12 years off of it.
All right. So you're knocking 12 years off the first one.
Yeah. And
then as soon as you knock off 12 years off that first one, then the other one gets paid off in a couple more years.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So something that you'd think that you'd own 2 houses outright in 30 years, you own one outright in 18 and the other one in like 21 and 23. And then, me in numbers.
It's close enough.
Close enough. And then as a result, you have all this extra cash flow and all this built-in equity. Does this stuff play together with the leverage with the refinancing strategies and stuff like that?
Well, it definitely can play together with the refinancing strategy. What would happen is, if you see an opportunity to refinance your properties, you basically pull out that cash, but you start a new loan again. And so then we throw this into the C3X calculation again, and we do the same thing. We see the excess cash flow that you now have, and we do the same process, and it would be a slightly different year of payoff. But what you do is you'd have more assets that you accumulated here in your army of income producing assets.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So that is if you buy 2 leverage properties. We also have one example of buying one in cash and the other one, or like a hybrid strategy as well, right, GC?
Yeah, exactly. So this hybrid strategy, I think, is really useful. Well, listen, right now, some folks are just, more conservative. And so they might say, well, you know what, I want to do some financed, but I want to do some cash.
Mhm.
And so the numbers start to get really exciting when you think about one property being owned free and clear right off the bat and using the cash flow from that free and clear property along with the cash flow from the other finance properties to really start attacking one of these mortgages. And so this is, again, I added a third property here. So this one at 5398 10th Street, another available property for us. And I said, well, what if a client purchases that one and buys it in all cash? Well, the payoff each month is a little over $1,000. Once it's all paid off, which it's paid off immediately, this is going to generate about $1,000 a month. And then the other 2 properties, again, make between $125 to $150 a month. Mm-hmm. So now you're taking, about $1,300 a month. And now you're attacking the lowest balance first. And when you do that, if you go down to that bottom section there on the left there, yeah, that first property, let's see which loan it is. Yeah, if you just go over to the left there so I can see which asset. Yeah, so the one on Ottawa Avenue now is paid off in 2031.
Yeah.
Yes.
In just 8 years.
In 8 years. So in 8 years, you now have a second property that's owned free and clear. And your third one is paid off 5 years later on Halling Street. So you have a free and clear portfolio of 3 properties, and that's accomplished in 13 years, even though you took out 30-year mortgages.
Wow. Okay. So now you're owning 2 properties in less than 15 years, right? 1 in 8, 1 in 13. You've amounted all that equity, you've gotten all that stuff and opened up all those other levers of financial engineering plus cash flow plus risk mitigation as well.
Exactly. Man, and you have the option again here. How does this play in with the refinancing strategy?
Yeah.
This makes sense to do regardless if you want to refinance in the future, because all you're doing by this way is paying down that principal, which when you go to refinance in 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, you now are able to pull out that much more equity at that turn. And then if that makes sense for your goals, you just simply go right back into this C3X strategy.
Awesome. Yeah, that C3X is super powerful. We did you can go back into like the annals of the JWB Not Your Average Investor show on YouTube. We did a whole show of what's Paul's last name?
Shively.
Paul Shively going through the whole like mathematics exercise, but we just wanted to show it of this like rapid pay down that gets you your financial goals quicker through money engineering. We got a couple questions here. Ty Oladipo is back. Ty, good to see you.
All right.
Asking, does cash flow once free and clear account for the time value of money?
Not in this example. It doesn't account for the time value of money. This is just straight cash flow that is coming from your rental property minus all expenses.
Got it. And then Kelly's asking, so say that again. You take the net cash flow from both and put it toward the principal of the house with the lowest principal balance, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And to summarize, when you do that, what happens is that your debt pay down accelerates, you start to amass equity much quicker, and you end up owning homes in a period much shorter than you originally negotiated for, which originally was 30, and you can get it down to like in the low 20s. And even if you're buying a house in full cash and using, multiple properties, you can even get it down, own the home in under 10 years kind of thing.
Yeah. And let's just change the terminology. A lot of people say, well, I have to wait to own the home until the mortgage is paid off.
My bad.
It's common terminology. People say that you own the home day one.
Yeah.
The debt is paid off in 13 years or 18 years or whatnot, which is what we want. We want to own assets, and then we can strategically look to pay down the debt. And again, this does not include you making additional principal pay down, payments. If that's the right move for you, you can continue to do that. And that will just drop these number of years from when this is paid off.
Got it. I'm going to take 2 more questions and then we're going to announce the raffle winner.
Love it.
You ready? Bob Wiesner's got a question. Say that you purchased some houses a couple of years ago and got loans at a good interest rate, say less than 3%. Do we really want to pay those off early? Why not just write out the great interest rate?
It's tough. That's a great question, Bob. Bob's saying, listen, I've got interest rates on my loans at 3%. Does it make sense to pay those things off? It is tough to justify paying off a 3% debt, to be quite honest. So for those who just bought, a year or two ago, the chances that a refinance makes sense for you is very slim, because you probably don't have that much equity to justify it to where it makes sense on a numbers basis. And man, I hate paying off a loan at 3%. If you have the debt at 3% and inflation is 3%, that's like you're borrowing money for free. And right now, 6% is inflation. Mm-hmm. So you're actually profiting by holding the loan. So great point. Typically is not going to work for somebody who just bought a year or two ago, even though you have some significant equity. It's probably not going to play out in that direction. It's more for people that have owned longer than that back in the day, where interest rates were higher and they have more equity.
The good news is that if you did that, you invested in the single best moment in history to get a loan. It was when Richie came on here and said, the deal is in the debt. You took advantage of that. I think a lot of us took advantage of that. The other good news is that if you didn't take advantage of that, all this stuff works even better for you. Right. So that's cool. There was another thing that Leslie said that I want to call out, which is a great call. It would be better to do a cash out refi. If you are going to rapidly pay down a debt and then you're planning on refinancing, Leslie says it would be better to do a cash out refi when you have a small mortgage in place. Easier underwriting than if the house is free and clear.
Oh yeah.
Just a little tip.
I hadn't really thought about that, but sure, that plays.
From the real estate maven of Denver.
There you go.
All right, cool. Greg Stone has one more question. He wanted the +1 financial leverage tool. Greg Stone asks, when does it make sense to do a 1031 exchange? GC, in 60 seconds or less, what is a 1031 exchange and when does it make sense to do it?
You're really challenging me here. So a 1031 exchange is this beautiful opportunity that you have to sell your investment properties, add additional investment properties, and not pay taxes at the time of sale. This is something that's only available to real estate and purchases and like kind purchases in real estate. It's not available in the stock market. But what you can do is defer taxes, not just until you sell. You can defer taxes forever. You never actually have to pay the taxes if you continue to do 1031 exchanges and continue that process. So a huge value for you to be able to sell a house, not pay the taxes on it, and then invest in additional investment properties. And a great example of this is if you have a property in California that you have $1 million in equity in, you can sell that property in California. You can turn that into 4 rental properties in Jacksonville or more if we're using financing. And, immediately day one, instead of some of your capital having to go to pay Uncle Sam based on the sale of that property in California, now you get to use that capital to acquire a 5th rental property in Jacksonville, more assets that now can grow. And again, through a 1031, you do not have to pay the tax at the time of sale. Now, there's certain rules and regulations that you have to follow with the 1031. We have a show on this that we did back in the day. Happy to go more in that when we have a little bit more than 60 seconds, but a wonderful tool for those who want to take advantage of extreme tax savings through rental properties.
There you go. So if you look through the Not Your Average Investor Show episodes on YouTube or on podcasts, you're going to find one on 1031 exchanges with Paul Shively and another one a 1031 exchanges and another one on C3X with Paul Shively as well. So you can go check those out. And now, GC, the moment we've all been waiting for, the announcement of who won the 50-50 raffle, $4,500 to a veteran, $4,500 to...
Well, before we get there, I first just want to say thank you to all of you. This has been an incredible donation spree that you all have been a part of. We kicked it off here on the show a number of weeks ago, and you all showed up with such support. Into the thousands you all just donated from your hearts. So thank you so much to everybody here.
Original goal was 2 Gs.
Yeah, that's right.
And we raised over 9.
We raised over $9,000. Also, a special thank you to our clients and our vendors and our network and our team. Everybody has come together, especially over the last week or two, to really put a push together. And just funny side note, one of the things that we all decided to do is to throw some interesting incentives the way of the team and clients and network of vendors. If we raised over $9,000, then yours truly was going to get pied in the face.
Well, there was an escalating thing, right? It was like Alex Safakis was at like a 4.
Yeah. Alex is the one we wanted to pie the most. So I think it was $8,000. Alex got to get pied in the face. So that'll happen. I was next up in line. And so at $9,000, I will be pied in the face next Tuesday right after our team meeting. So
I have to put that on the old calendar.
Yeah, certainly. You're all invited to come and watch that. I'm sure we'll be videoing it. So just a big thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I know why you did this. It was to support this wonderful mission and to be a part of this, of building a new construction home and giving it to a veteran. So I hope you all feel really good about the difference that you're making. And there's one special person who donated and who's going to feel extra special because they get to feel the love of that.
Tell me, GC is
and then they also get to walk away with a $4,500 check. Mr. Jared Holgan. Mr. Jared Holgan. He's local here in Jacksonville. He's an appraiser. Jared, you are the big winner, my friend. Congratulations. You've got a $4,500 check coming your way, my friend.
A little bit jealous of you, Jared, but I'm happy for you in a very generous way from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to everybody that contributed. Thank you to the community who showed up for the show, right? We had 60 plus people on here on a Tuesday, middle of the workday. It shows that you're paying attention. It shows that you see value here, asking great questions, allowing us to explain these concepts. Tons of fun for me personally. And I just really, never take it for granted that you're all showing up here. Thursday, we're back with the JWB.
Week.
And I'll let you send us away, GC.
Just so many great things. Thank you all for being here. Remember when they said that nobody would ever show up for a show that you do midday?
I do remember that. Yeah.
And actually, when we started doing the show, nobody did show up.
That's right. We had to earn it.
It's just a pleasure being here every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you, hundreds of you, for taking time out of your week to be here with us, and for the thousands of you who are listening on podcasts. And just thank you again for being a part of this wonderful mission for JWB Cares. Congratulations to Jared, and congratulations to all of you for being a part of this. And yeah, can't wait for Thursday. We'll see you then.
Hey, since we still got 50 people on, if you could go into your podcast player and look at the Not Your Average Investor Show podcast and give it a rating and a review, I'd really, really appreciate that. But more than anything, what I want to say is if you want to be a level